A growing number of Christian and conservative groups are facing a new kind of discrimination. Banks are closing their accounts, turning off payment processors, putting some on blacklists. What's even more troubling is that these actions are carried out under the cover of our federal banking laws. CBN's Dale Hurd reports on what's behind this growing trend.
Banking has become weaponized. Christian and conservative groups are labeled high risk and then debanked or denied financial services. Among the victims, Indigenous Advanced Ministries, which helps orphans and widows in Africa. Its account closed by Bank of America. Family Council of Arkansas, which works to promote traditional family values, canceled by J.P. Morgan Chase. And the Pro-Family Ruth Institute. It lost its payment processor after it was targeted by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group.
The office manager received an email saying, "We're not going to do business with you anymore." She went right then and looked at our bank account, and it was gone. The credit card processing was gone.
And what qualified the Ruth Institute as an alleged hate group?
The dream of the Ruth Institute is that every child be welcomed into a loving home with their own mother and father married to each other.
Even the National Committee for Religious Freedom, a multi-faith organization headed by former U.S. Senator and Religious Freedom Ambassador Sam Brownback, had its bank account closed by J.P. Morgan Chase.
I went in to make a deposit at a branch here in Kansas about 3 or 4 weeks after we'd opened up the account, I think, and the teller there said, that account's been closed. I go, what? I said, yeah, it's that account's been closed. Your funds will be being sent to you in a couple of weeks.
Banking expert Nick Anthony says federal law gives banks a myriad of excuses to cancel groups whose values present what's termed reputational risks. He adds the real culprits may also be federal regulators who can pressure banks to cancel certain groups.
Banks are deputized as de facto law enforcement investigators, and they face a very real consequence of missing anything. When banks have concerns about money laundering or suspicious source of funds, or they don't like where the funds are going for any reason, they're prohibited from telling customers what the actual reason is. They're prohibited from telling people that they filed these reports to the government and now something has gone awry.
That said, Anthony believes the law is also being used as cover to cancel groups banks don't like. Sam Brownback would later learn that J.P. Morgan Chase canceled his group after designating him as a politically exposed person with a customer risk profile, a designation that's only supposed to be applied to foreign nationals, not former U.S. senators. Nevertheless, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said no apologies are necessary. It's no secret that corporate boardrooms are under pressure from liberal groups to push DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which includes the LBGTQ agenda. The most powerful investment firm in the world, BlackRock, has stated that LGBT diversity is in their DNA. And nearly every major credit card issuer has openly donated money to the LGBTQ cause, a cause most conservative faith groups oppose.
The profit motive is not their only motive anymore. The people who are choosing the regulatory process are people who have a vision for family life in America, for human sexuality, and they're using their power to create a world in their own image.
Bank of America, which closed Indigenous Advanced Ministries accounts, said religious beliefs are not a factor in any account closing decision, but that it was because of a side business of debt collection services run by the ministry. While we found an instance where a liberal group was debanked, most have been conservative or faith groups. After his experience, Brownback started a website called Chased Away, so others like him could share their story.
You ought to be able to be a Christian if you want to, and use whatever bank you want to and not be excluded based on your values or peacefully practicing your faith.
Unfortunately, Anthony expects the debanking trend to continue until Congress finally changes the banking laws to protect people of faith.
Well, let's urge our elected representatives, and let me underline they're elected, We get to throw the bums out every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years. These are our rights as citizens, and if these laws are being used and abused to come after Christian conservative groups, well, then we need to stand up and say, no, in America you have the freedom of religion, you have the freedom of speech, you have the freedom of assembly. Our laws shouldn't be stacked against certain political views or certain religious views. We should be open to all. The left seems to be on a mission. When you look at what the Southern Poverty Law Center is doing, it's not about law, it's not about poverty. It's not even Southern, it's about an ideology, and they want to label people hate groups. And they're taking that label to the major corporations and saying you shouldn't do business with them. It's incredible. Are we entering into an age where you can't have a bank account in America if you're a Christian group? You can't exercise your freedom to participate in the political process if you're a Christian group. All of these things are very chilling and very disturbing. We need to say, no, what is happening to the smallest ones of these organizations, it's really happening to all of us. And we all need to stand up and say, please, Congress, could you change this?